All right, in this video, I'm going to tell you 3 reasons why I really like Tight Bunch. Now, as we've been growing this channel, there's lots of people who've come on, and talked about some things that I'll talk about today. I'm just going to try and talk about Tight Bunch, specifically, and why kind of I think it's something that everyone should work into their offense, and you're seeing a ton more of these type of sets across any league. First thing, get a lot of people who comment on these videos being like, there's 12 guys. I know this is a channel that produces content for both Canadian and American coaches. Today's examples I'm going to drop in the Canadian context. If I was coaching American ball, American rules, I would still love Tight Bunch for these same 3 reasons. Just these diagrams are going to have 12 players to deal with it. Okay. So why do I like Tight Bunch? 3 reasons. Number one, you're going to create a situation where the defense has to adjust to something they might not see every week. So when you come out and you line up, a lot of people in Canada, right? And that Y can be, a blocking slot or a tight end body type or just a fifth receiver. A lot of people are used to defending 32 ace or 22 two back, even formations where you put a tight end on the ball, right? When you get into a bunch, now you're going to get a team, okay, well, how do they want to play this very specific situation where you have, 3 receivers really tight to each other that can exchange releases, that can all be added to the box, that can all break out and run routes, can add in pass protection. How are they going to handle that, whether they're in man or zone? So, teams aren't just obviously going to leave players out here covering no one. They're going to bring guys down. Are they going to press the point? If they press the point, often when you get, that bunch outside, they're going to press the point with kind of head up leverage, and then play these two and one inside, one outside. Well, now that point's down in here, and this guy, theoretically might be trying to reach block them, and the ball can hit the perimeter really quickly. Yes, you can play someone head up on the point, but now this receiver, if they're head up, hopefully if we're even, we can capture that outside edge, and have somebody else left for the corner. And even just the physical alignment on the field, it's a little bit, maybe counter to some of the things that have been really popular recently with spread. And this certainly isn't an anti-take on the spread. I think your formations, you always want to be aware of where am I creating space and where am I gaining a numbers advantage. And as long as you are cognizant of where you're doing that, where you're not doing that, I think you can be really successful. Here, alignment-wise, you'll probably get every defensive player inside the hash mark. So if then, and through any number of ways, if you can get the ball out in the perimeter, now the defense is running to the football and they don't have any immediate players, right? If you're out here and you throw, say, bubble screen, or even something as simple as, number 3 here just runs, your stick route, and you get a catch on this out. Well, if you're in a normal formation with normal distribution, there's going to be 2 players with outside leverage on that guy, probably when the ball gets caught, whether it's zone or even if it's man, even if these guys have carried on down the field covering their guy, there's going to be players out here that can rally to that. When you get down into the tight bunch, you take, the leverage of most players. And I know Coach Vass, who's a guy that's talked on this channel, and anyone who's, trying to get better in the coaching world is aware of his podcast and work on Make Defense Great Again, his Patreon stuff. Okay. But he talks about when teams get tight in the American game, they want to stay wide because they know that teams are trying to attack that space. Okay. And that's his priority in defending that, which makes a lot of sense. You're going to get a lot of teams, though, that are going to match up and just say, hey, they're tight. We got to get in tight. And that creates space on the perimeter. You're going to get as well, typically your field halfback and most teams, that field corner, that's your 12th best guy on defense. You're now going to put him in the box where you're in a situation that they may have to enter into the run fit. And anytime you can do that, obviously you feel pretty good about that guy having a tackle. So let's look at one example, one play. You get these people they're the defense here to tighten up, right? And how can you take advantage of that if they don't want to tighten up? We'll say, this guy wants to play outside leverage because they're worried about some kind of toss and they're playing, like a double hold coverage here, like a 3, right? Okay, we get something along the lines of that. They're playing zone. Well, now we have these extra bodies, any sort of, even something as simple as inside zone, right? And we can get into the whole inside zone duo debate here, but even some kind of inside zone, usually you're going to have unblocked players on the backside, right? Well, here with this tight bunch, now we can use our Y and dig out that end. Well, great. That's something most teams maybe already have the capability to do out of their spreader two back. We can bring the Z down and try and dig out the Sam backer. Okay, so now that unblocked player, right, even on something as simple as a turn straight inside zone give this way, now if that ball cuts back, right, now it's cutting back and we've got a body on these unblocked players. Typically, if we're out here, if we're out here, okay, now you might be able to block this end, but then when the ball cuts back, that Sam backer will fall in late, which, 5 yards, whatever, you get your yardage, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But especially if you have some receivers that are willing to get in there and block, which I know not everybody has, but if you have some receivers that are willing to get in there and block, now you can dig out, these next two players. Now that unblocked guy's the corner, right? So now at least those unblocked players, and again, even if you're not, if you're not killing these guys in the backside, at least they're trying to now make arm tackles. Where if this ball, cuts back off that inside zone, well, now it's just that field corner is the only guy left to make that play. Okay. Off of that, you can run some designed cutback stuff, whether you want to call it duo, whether you want to call it like power, where it's what we call power lock. We used to call that at Laurier. Okay. Where basically you're running like a down block scheme now, man scheme, where you're down blocking these five. Okay. And you're pinning the end inside, you're pinning the Sam inside, and you're taking the slash receiver here to block the half. And you're telling this running back, hey, you're going to take it and you're going to run this off the edge. Okay. And as soon as you get a chance, as soon as you get one of these guys jumping backside out of the gap, you put your foot down, get vertical, right? A lot of people, would recognize this as like a duo concept. Okay. Now, again, that unblocked player is the corner. So you're able to, if you can execute here, right, take those defensive rules, use them against them, right? All these guys have a gap they're trying to fit. He's trying to fit off the hip of the tackle. He's trying to fit off the hip of the Y. He's trying to fit off the hip of the Z, right? We get a body on a body, and eventually, that corner might be high in zone coverage, right? The ball's able to wind back, and now this corner has a ton of space because he's not just having to now fit down, right? He's got the threat of this ball potentially rolling all the way off the table, and if he misses, this thing getting out into space. Okay, so that's one reason I love tight bunch. You can also spruce that up formationally, and this is where we'll get a little more specific into Canadian football. Where, okay, now how can we even make this worse on the defense? How can we make this harder for them? A lot of teams, when you play 31-2 back, right, you bring this player over here. They still want to play their hold coverage on the backside, or maybe they want to play, a cut and bracket this boundary one. And they're going to play in their zone coverages. The Sam is going to kind of split the box, his D gap, if this Y were to show up here in this third receiver. Okay. Well, now, if you do that, they're really short here to the field. We have 4 potential blockers, and including the safety in the corner, right? They only got 4 total players here because they're 2-on-1 on the backside. So whatever look they give you, if they're not rotating or adjusting their coverage to the 3-by-1, right? Now, and you can even influence them to do that by trying to leave the Y here, right on this side, get them to leave the halfback on that side. Whatever it is, okay, you can get down into that tight bunch. And now if they're going to be short, right, let's just say they're doubling here on the backside. They're playing some kind of cone bracket coverage on the backside. They're going to double on the backside here. Well, now, you're adding gaps that they do not have the players to account for, right? So, for example, now you got your Y in the backfield, right? You might run some kind of toss action to the tailback out here, and they just don't have the players to cover down it. If you want, you could double this defensive end, right? Everybody's working back. Pull around and take your chances on the corner, okay? Or, if you don't want to double, there on the backside, you're really +1, right? If you can kind of crack and pin him down, right? You can pull both these guys around. You're creating that kind of old school student body look you'd get out of 21 personnel, okay? and you're really loaded up in terms of the numbers. You can do the same thing with duo and have this guy lead off the edge. Okay, so you're creating that formational, either numbers advantage, or if they are, if they are willing to bring this guy over, that now brings me to my second point. So if they're going to, let's keep the Y over here. The second reason I really like, having the ability to go tight bunch is you can drastically change the formation, where either really, really late pre-snap or even post-snap. And this is where I think a lot of teams, in the American game are finding advantages in this, where obviously in Canada we can do a lot more with motion. So you can change the formation pre-snap, significantly easier than you can in the American game. But if you're lined up, here in a traditional, Canadian 32 set, right? Usually when you get a motion that's going to change the strength, it's going to come from one or multiple of the slots. Okay. But because those slots are coming out of a base alignment, there's a decent amount of time. Like, let's say this guy wants to come across the set, right? There's a decent amount of time. So you want to run split zone, right? So you're running split zone, inside zone, where you're going to bring the Y across. There's a lot of time, for the Sam linebacker here to recognize that motion pre-snap, okay, and communicate however they're going to adjust to that motion defensively. When you get into the tight bunch, those motions happen much later because of the location of the players. So, for example, you bring your Z down there. Now you get into this tight bunch, so you want to run the exact same play, right? Now that motion can almost trigger after the snap. And makes it much harder for this guy who's not sure whether, the Y from here, he could be running this route in the flat and attacking that field space, right? From that position, he can still run vertical, okay, and get into the post or get into the seam. But now when he runs that kind of late motion, okay, it can be really, really hard on that backer to adjust to it later. And even post snap, and what I mean by changing the strength post snap, we can align here. And again, in Canada, you don't necessarily, these guys can play with some depth and you can motion down into this, skate down into this. Okay. But let's say, for example, we want to run some kind of vertical shot. If you look at this formation, okay, where's the strength? Well, there's 3 receivers and it's to the field side. Okay. So most teams defensively are going to align with their Sam linebacker out on number 3. Okay. And the free safety, obviously, depending on the coverage, might be somewhere in the middle of the field, could be over on a hash. Depends what you're in. If you're going to now attack, say, the boundary side of the field in the pass game, there's only certain spots in the boundary that these players can get to, right? Like the Y, the Y could run, some kind of crossing route, or some kind of deep over route or a post route. So it could probably be the R, but it's gonna be pretty tough for the Z to get onto this side of the field unless he's gonna skate down really, really early. Okay. So here's one example of a way that I've seen teams do this. So they get in their tight bunch. They have 3 players really, really close, to the middle of the field where they can easily finish and cross the set. I've seen this a ton, and this is super, super late, but you get some kind of play action, right, where the Y is coming across, okay, and he's going to bluff the end and slip into the flat. You get, kind of 2, whether you get your like post wheel concept on this side or whatever concept you want, that, obviously you can throw, but it's also going to take these, 2 players off the board. Or if you don't take those 2 players off the board, it's going to stretch the side. Okay. And then from there, you can still get that deep over route, off of play action. So now, all of a sudden, like let's say it's off of an inside zone. So you're showing inside zone, quarterback's going to pull it. Okay. You're running like a bootleg concept here. All of a sudden, when the play finishes, we've got 1 receiver left here to the field, right? And maybe you have them on like another deep over dig type concept. But when there's 4 receivers now immediately attacking the boundary. If you get a zone coverage, right? If you get a zone coverage, that's going to quickly flood that coverage from where the strength used to be over here. Now, quickly, we have 4 receiving targets in the boundary. That can be really, really tough on defenses. That's what I mean post-snap. The other thing, and this is something if you follow our channel and have seen, some of the stuff we did on Michigan's offense this year that they did a ton of, in the American game. We have a coach tube course on it. Check it out. It's like tons of, I think it's over 11 hours of film breakdown. It took me months to do. It's the offense Michigan ran this year, really, really interesting. I think really, really applicable at all levels of football. But one thing they would do a great job of is they would get into these tight sets. And then even in the run game, they would take, for example, this was a classic one. So they'd start here. I'll reset the formation. So let's say, for example, they wanted to run, some kind of end around. Okay. Some kind of end around. So we'll get a little hybrid here talking about the Michigan offense, the Canadian context. So there's 3 receivers in the boundary, right? We got the Y, we got the R receiver, and we got the X, tailbacks in the backfield. So let's say the defense is going to adjust by sliding the linebackers. Okay, so slide the Sam into the box. Still got your 3 receivers to the field. What they would do is they'd start in this set, they'd get the defense to a line. Okay, here's the strength. We've slid the linebackers. Okay, the first thing they do is they'd pre-snap motion, right? Like it's going to be some kind of jet sweep. This guy's going to become a lead blocker. So let's say that these 2 are going to come down and they're going to pin the halfback, and they're going to look to chip up to the safety if they get a chance. Okay. This guy's going to become a lead blocker on the corner. And again, Canadian ball. Okay. So we can move multiple guys at the same time pre-snap. Let's even say you're talking the American game. Michigan would then bring the Y across, and he would slip the defensive end. Okay. And then they would fake the inside zone to the back, and then get your end around from this X off the line of scrimmage. Okay. So again, there's a lot going on here. What am I talking about? Well, this defensive end, what I'm talking about here is changing the strength of formation post snap. So initially we got 2 receivers to the field, 3 to the boundary. Most teams are going to have some adjustment. They might not move everybody, but they're going to have to adjust in some way to the fact that you have 3 potential receivers, 3 potential blockers in the boundary. If they don't, all that stuff I talked about in the first part of this video, duo, toss, all that stuff in the boundary is great. We'll talk about quick game passing in a sec. Okay. That's all awesome. If they do make that adjustment, now you're going to want to bring guys back from that bunch to the field. So again, here you get the jet sweep action. This guy's leaving at, or, in Canada, it could be just before the snap, going to slip the end. This looks like, inside zone, which you're going to get out of this all the time. Okay. And now really ultimately there's no receivers left in the boundary when this play's done. Right. So the defense is going to have to radically shift. Okay. When this ball gets given on the end around, if they want to have a hope, right? Yeah, sure. They might slide the Sam across with the fullback. Okay, great. Bring him back into the box, bring him back into the box. This guy's come across. How are they going to adjust to that? Are they going to rotate him high and rotate the safety down potentially? Okay, and then find the X runs, the end arounds, the corner going to run across. Most teams, especially in zone, aren't going to be able to pull all of that off. So it allows you to drastically change the strength of the formation, even post snap, which I find super valuable. The last thing, and reason why I really like tight bunch, is your ability to beat man coverage if you don't have elite man-to-man separators. Okay. And so one thing I really like out of it is, okay, how can we try and get the ball so our completions result in bigger plays? So what am I talking about with that? Well, let's say, try and bring this back over here. Let's put our bunch back to the field, tight bunch back to the field. All right, great. So let's say we want to run. I'm going to get the defensive line here. Let's say, okay, these guys are tired of us being able to run the ball on them. Okay, the run game is at least proficient. Okay, and they're starting to play more. Man, even if it's zone coverage, you're changing kind of the landmarks of where they're going to be at. And we want to try and throw the ball a little bit. Well, when you put them in this situation, there's a lot of different ways to quickly get a receiver out into this space, and it changes the eyes of the defenders. Okay, so let's say one super common route concept that I love to run out of this is some kind of basic smash. Okay. So the Rams ran this one a lot with Cooper Kupp. I was just watching some of their tape recently. Okay. Where they're just getting in some way, shape, or form, you're getting that low player in the smash towards the sideline instead of this guy being out here running a hook route. Now he's just running some kind of flat route. Okay. And then you're getting a corner route, let's say here from our W receiver. All right. You might run this like a snag. Okay, from the Z here. You might use the Z in a mesh concept, coming back over the ball and replace that linebacker with the mesh coming back the other way. There's lots you can do there out of it, but in some capacity you're running, you may go to your you may take this and work it in with another vertical. So for example, you might get a post route here to make sure that the safety is not helping on this corner route, whatever you want to do with that third receiver. Okay. Couple things. Number one, if I have a fullback in this, I love for them to, as much as I can, be the flat player. But at times you might want to put a faster guy in there because this is a great chance. Again, if you look at this here, this, even if this guy's the flat player, let's say they're playing zone, corner drops underneath or takes this route vertically, he's the high player. Let's say on the backside, you got, some kind of pin to hold the free safety. So the free safety's got to stay in the middle of the field if they're playing single high because we got this backside post. We get the Y in the flat. This half has to widen right away, right? He can't hang up at all. Well, he's got to try and widen through this vertical. Can be an easy, almost, accidental rub there. Whether you want to kind of create that rub by running this little snag route that sits outside to free it up. These little completions can become huge plays, even if these aren't great man-to-man guys, right? So having that vertical player, run through the outside shoulder of who's ever going to end up in the flat, okay? The other one that's great, variation on this, depending on how they're going to play the bunch, is if their corner is the high player, right? He's going to lift and try and take the vertical route. Well, we can really, really easily out leverage the halfback by just, especially in Canada where you can stem into this, waggle out and sprint, right? Have this guy work to run that corner into the smash concept. Now this guy, he has no leverage on this. This could be a quick turn and throw, easy throw for the quarterback, and can create some opportunities for you to then catch the ball and run in a ton of space. In that situation, which I really, really like. So that basic smash concept, you can dress it up a ton of ways. You can run it with the slot fade, okay, is a great way. I've seen a lot of teams doing that. Great way to, kind of leverage defenders and attack that flat to whatever side you have the bunch. Okay, so that's in terms of quick passing game, beating man coverage. That's one concept I love, although I also don't mind it against zone. And the other thing is just to create traffic, right? We've seen tons of teams, let's say the Mike has the running back here, there's a ton of different ways and you could build this into your smash concept. Now the back becomes, potentially leaving early, runs that kind of bubble action. Now the back becomes that horizontal stretch, right? That you're trying to pick for on that smash concept. You may have a third level. This guy snagging up back inside. You may have a third level route here that's in the middle, if you get somebody jumping down on this. Okay, but your ability to then throw the ball to the perimeter, they're pass plays, but they're really extensions of that run game and really, really simple plays. Obviously, the last one, our first video ever was on this concept, but running some kind of mesh where you're going to pick and have somebody from the other side now attack that space. So, let's say here, say we're trying to run the mesh, we're trying to get our X receiver into that field space. Well, he's going to motion down, run the under, sit, mesh, that kind of mesh pyramid look. Again, W is going to run the corner. Similar read for the quarterback. You could still, flare the back if you wanted to. trying to get somebody back in behind the free safety. You know, I've seen teams, you know, bring the back out and then run the wheel off of this. Obviously, you might want to change, you know, now what the W's doing. Okay. But those are all great ways to kind of create traffic and get the ball leveraged thrown out into that space outside of the bunch that the defense is having to kind of give you if they're going to come down and match the number. So three reasons why I love bunch: forces DBs to get into the run fit. Anytime you can do that, I think it's great. You're going to create space in the defense that you can then throw the ball out into quickly, and you can change the strength of the formation either really, really late pre-snap or post-snap, trying to create advantages. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, thanks for subscribing. Like the video, throw a comment on there. It helps more people find it.